We now have Will Travis, Executive Director of Bay Conservation and Development Commission, one of the key agencies which was involved in developing the climate change strategy plan for California. He's going to talk us through ideas of building climate resilient cities. Will?
Thank you. Wonderful to be here. Looking forward to the discussion. I'm going to talk to you about why sea level rise is such a critical problem in the Bay Area, what the region is doing to deal with this and other impacts of climate change. And we hope that some of what we're doing can be applicable elsewhere. I'm also going to be focusing on the critical need to integrate adaptation planning with mitigation planning, because you find often that they are actually at odds with each other. So I think our great challenge is putting the two together at the same time. This is the San Francisco Bay region, the San Joaquin River Delta. It comprises the largest estuary on the west coast of both the North and South American continents. And as Matt has explained to you, probably the best known repercussion of global warming is sea level rise. This is the chart of sea level rise in San Francisco Bay, which shows that the waters rose about 8 inches over the past century. As we look into the future, California scientists looked at different scenarios depending on how much and how effective we are in controlling greenhouse gases. They found that the average temperatures in California could rise between 3.5 degrees Fahrenheit and 10 degrees Fahrenheit by the end of this century. Now, just to put that into context, the difference between the average temperature in San Francisco in the winter and the average temperature in the summer is 10 degrees. So it would be like changing winter into summer. Mark Twain once said that the coldest winter he ever spent was a summer in San Francisco, but we'll put that aside for a moment. If the temperature rises are at the upper end of the spectrum, this chart shows that the bay waters could rise about 0.4 of a meter, about 16 inches, by mid-century, and 1.4 meters, or 55 inches, by 2100. To appreciate what sea level rise will do to the Bay Area, it's necessary to understand a little bit of history. This is the bay today, but what you're seeing there is a bay that's about 1/3 smaller than it was in 1850 when California became a state. And the bay got smaller for a simple reason. It was shallow. It was really easy to fill. Large parts of the bay were used for garbage dumps, were diked off, and were reclaimed for real estate. On average, between 1850 and 1960, 2 square miles of the bay vanished every year. So today, the bay is surrounded by 240 square miles of reclaimed filled land. If you're anywhere around the shoreline of San Francisco Bay and you're standing on flat ground, the chances are you're on filled land. And when that land was reclaimed, it was filled just high enough to get it above sea level. So to see what sea level rise will do to the Bay Area, here are 2 maps. One, what the bay looked like in 1849, and one, what it could look like in 2100 with 55 inches of sea level rise. You see, they look pretty much the same. So at first blush, you can say, hey, that's good news. All that area that got reclaimed in the past 100 years, we get back, and it becomes part of the bay again. The bad news is we have built all kinds of expensive stuff on that low-lying filled land, stuff that's just essential to civilization as we know it. Let me give you a few examples. Matt mentioned this. This is San Francisco International Airport. The light blue shows the area that's vulnerable to flooding by mid-century, by 2050. The dark blue shows the area that could be underwater by 2100. So unless the airport is protected, it's all vulnerable to going underwater. My friends in the East Bay look at this and say, oh, the message in this slide? Fly Oakland. Perhaps not. This is Oakland International Airport. Same problem. And this is Silicon Valley, which faces double jeopardy. Before Silicon Valley had the name Silicon Valley, it was called the Valley of Heart's Delight. And it was orchards, and those orchards were irrigated with groundwater that was pumped from wells. And as a result of that groundwater extraction, the ground level sank. So much of the South Bay is already below sea level. But in addition to sea level rise over the next century, the scientists tell us that we will face another problem, and that is more intense storms more often. A storm surge is what we get in the wintertime, when we have lowest barometric pressures, highest tides, heavy rains, and wind pushing the water across the bay and up onto the shoreline. The scientists tell us that the kind of extreme storm surge events we've experienced once a century in the past will face 10 times as often in the future. Now, California has already taken a world leadership position in global warming. The governor just finished a summit down in Los Angeles yesterday. And over the past several years, the state has enacted much legislation aimed at reducing greenhouse gases. But California has also recognized that we have to complement our greenhouse gas reduction strategies with adaptation strategies. So last November, the governor issued an executive order. It requires all state agencies to work together to develop an adaptation strategy. And the governor also asked the National Academy of Sciences to advise California on the range of sea level rise we should be planning for. And he asked the Academy of Sciences to deliver its recommendations in November of 2010. Matt has shown you this slide. It shows why adaptation is absolutely essential. It's too late to prevent sea level rise and global warming. Even if we shut down all of our power plants, park all of our cars, turn off all the lights everywhere on planet Earth today, it's going to continue to get warmer and the seas are going to continue to rise. So we're in much the same position as the captain of the Titanic was. By the time he finally looked up and saw the iceberg, no matter what he did after that, it was inevitable he was going to hit it. As part of the statewide adaptation planning effort, BCDC, which is a state agency, is working with other state departments in the Natural Resources Agency to develop an ocean and coastal adaptation strategy. And to develop the Bay Area component, BCDC is working with 3 other regional agencies that deal with land use planning, transportation, and air quality. Now, this kind of regional cooperation is absolutely essential. But cooperation alone has some limitations. If someone proposes to put a new subdivision in one of those low-lying areas around the bay, none of the 4 regional agencies has the authority to say, no, you can't do that. In fact, none of us even has the authority to say, well, if you're going to build houses there, at least build a levee to protect the poor people who are going to live there. That authority rests with 110 cities and 9 counties in the Bay Area, 55 of them front on San Francisco Bay.